Hi, welcome back to Lynn Reads, the channel where we share powerful insights and personal growth lessons through great books. What If? The Fight for Book. We've included a link to the book in the description below. Now, let's get started. To Kill a Mockingbird 1960 is one of the most influential American novels ever written, set in a small town in Alabama during the 1930s. The novel follows the Finch family over 3 tumultuous years, when a trial divides the community, addressing themes like love and hate, innocence and experience, kindness and cruelty. Harper Lee's novel offers a profound psychological portrayal of the characters and an entire era. Harper Lee was born in 1926 in Monroeville, Alabama. She studied law at the University of Alabama, before moving to New York to pursue a writing career. To Kill a Mockingbird is her first and only novel. She won the Pulitzer Prize, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and numerous other literary awards. Harper Lee passed away on February 19, 2016. Over 18 million copies of To Kill a Mockingbird by American author Harper Lee have been sold worldwide since its first publication in 1960. In surveys and rankings of the most influential books for American readers, this novel consistently ranks high, second only to the Bible. So, why has a book about the racially segregated South been so beloved even after more than 60 years? As we will explore further in this condensed version, the book focuses on the core of human behavior, morality, and conscience. The story includes both heroic and villainous characters, but Harper Lee doesn't complicate moral questions. In her depiction, justice is an ongoing struggle that requires the courage to do what's right, even when you know you don't stand a chance of winning. In short, that's the lesson that attorney Atticus Finch, the central character of the story, teaches his children, as well as us, the readers. According to local residents, Mockingbird is a small town with only one taxi to its name. The town is truly small, just one taxi to take people from the train station. It's not completely abandoned, but there are signs of decapha. Sidewalks are overgrown with weeds. The streets are muddy and dusty, turning into red slopes when it rains. The climate here doesn't get much rain. Trees only sprout in the spring and shed their leaves in the fall, but the heat is ever present throughout the year. The scorching weather causes the stiff collars of men to be constantly soaked with sweat, and makes the makeup on women's faces melt away. The harshness of the weather makes time in Mockingbird feel like it moves slower than in other places. However, the town also has a larger presence. It is the administrative center and the seat of the county government. The core of the town consists of wide streets lined with oak trees and solid, classical-style buildings. The courthouse is perhaps the most sturdy and magnificent building. It is supported by huge stone columns, more resembling a Greek temple than a county courthouse. Compared to other towns of similar size, Mockingbird has a fairly large number of professionals, such as doctors and lawyers. It is the place where people come to get their teeth pulled, undergo general health checkups, and sign legal contracts. Mockingbird is primarily rural, a sea of cotton fields and forests. But the town itself stands like an urban island in the middle of a vast countryside. Among the professionals in Mockingbird is a lawyer named Atticus Finch, a tall man in his mid-40s with glasses. Atticus has a square, pleasant face and salt and pepper hair. He is a true product of Mockingbird. His ancestor, Simon Finch, was the founder of the town, and nearly every family in Mockingbird has some form of connection, either by blood or marriage, to the Finch family. Atticus is a highly regarded lawyer, considered the best in the entire county. However, he doesn't enjoy practicing criminal law, believing it to be a distasteful profession. Though it is important, it is also dirty. He realized this from his very first case, where he represented 2 brothers who had killed the town's blacksmith in a quarrel over a horse. He had planned to guide them to plead guilty to manslaughter, a charge that could save their lives. But both brothers insisted that the blacksmith was a vile man who deserved whatever was coming to him, and adamantly claimed their innocence. Atticus, feeling powerless, could do nothing more for his clients except attend their execution, something he did out of duty, but with deep disgust. Atticus has 2 children, Jem, aged 10, and his younger sister, Scout, aged 6. Both children adore their father. Atticus plays with them, reads to them, and talks to them openly and honestly, just like he does with everyone else. He also allows them freedom, trusting that Calpurnia will be there when they get into trouble or cause trouble themselves. Calpurnia, the intelligent and wise black servant, is the Finch family's cook. She plays a much bigger role than just a servant. She has helped raise Jem and Scout ever since their mother passed away 5 years ago. She is Atticus's close friend, his only friend, according to Scout. This is unusual because, in those times, it was rare for white men to have close friendships with black women. When playing outside, Jem and Scout must always stay within earshot of Calpurnia. Though reluctant, they dare not wander far. 2 houses to the north of the Finch house is the property of Mrs. Dubosin, elderly woman who sits in a wheelchair, with dark eyes and cheeks full of brown spots that Scout estimates are over 100 years old. She often sits on her porch and yells at any child who passes by. Her erratic temper is famous around town. Children often go miles out of their way to avoid passing her house on their way to school, and Jem and Scout do the same. The 3-door house to the south of the Finch home is entirely different, both frightening and intriguing. It stands shrouded in mystery. It belongs to the Radley family. The Radleys are deeply religious. Local people call them the foot washers, referring to their excessive emphasis on the ritual of cleansing sin. In the Radley family's eyes, there are only 2 types of people in the world: the sinners and those who are penitent. Their path is a narrow, straight one through a world filled with sin. Many years ago, the young Arthur Boo Radley was brought before the court for a minor offense swearing at women. But the Radley family didn't take this lightly. They believed Boo had sinned and dishonored the family. Since then, Boo was locked up in the house, essentially imprisoned. He resisted fiercely, even stabbing his father in the leg with a pair of scissors, but was still locked away. After Mr. Radley passed away, Boo's older brother became his guardian and continued to confine him. As Boo became more isolated from the outside world, his image grew more terrifying through the local gossip. His isolation turned him into a monster. People said he couldn't stand sunlight, so he roamed around other people's yards at night, peering through windows and even eating neighborhood cats. By the time Jem was 10 years old, he had adopted these chilling stories and quickly shared them with his sister. Scout listened with horror, wondering whether there was any truth to these rumors. Was Boo really the cold-blooded monster people made him out to be? The only way to find out was to lure him out of the house. Getting Boo out became the new game for Jem and Scout. That summer, 1933, they found an ally in Dilk, a boy from Mississippi who was staying with his aunt across the street for the summer. But how could they get Boo to come outside? In their first attempt, Jem ran across the street and knocked loudly on the Radley house wall. There was no response. Scout claimed she heard a faint laugh from behind the curtain, but the boys saw nothing unusual. Their next plan was to slip a note through Boo's bedroom window, inviting him to join them for ice cream. Atticus caught them trying to do this, and told them to leave Arthur alone. The most daring attempt came with Dill's participation on the last night in Micmum. The summer was coming to an end, and Scout would soon have to go to school with Jem. This was their last chance. They snuck into the Radley backyard to peer through the back window. Hearing a noise, Boo's brother came running out, carrying a double-barrel shotgun, firing a warning shot into the air, shouting that the next time he would shoot at the target. In their panic to escape, Jem's pants got caught on the Radley fence. This was bad. If they were caught, the game would be over. Jem decided to go back later that night to retrieve his pants. Scout begged her brother not to, saying she'd rather face their father's punishment than risk being shot by Mr. Radley or having Boo tear them apart. However, Jem was determined to return. But when he reached the Radley fence, he discovered something strange. There was no sign of a monster, only a neatly folded pair of pants, the cuffs torn and carefully stitched back together. Scout doesn't like school, nor does she like her teacher, Miss Caroline, a young woman from the neighboring district. Miss Caroline holds rigid views about education. She believes that children should learn in school, not at home with their parents or caregivers. But what Scout dislikes most about her is her arrogance. Miss Caroline doesn't understand life in Mockingbird, and never bothers to learn about it. When a poor student from a farming family shows up without lunch, Miss Caroline insists that the child borrow money from her. But everyone knows the Cunningham family is too proud to borrow money, even if they are struggling and can't repay it. Hoping to save her friend from embarrassment, Scout speaks up and tells the truth, only to be punished by Miss Caroline for her impertinence. Scout complains to her father, Atticus, but he tells her she will live a better life if she learns to put herself in other people. shoes and understand them. He explains that from their perspective, things often make much more sense. Maybe a year ago, Scout would have listened to this advice. But the worst part about school is that it challenges her trust in her father. Her classmates tease her, pushing her until Scout snaps and hits back with her fists. She really doesn't understand what they're saying. Perhaps they don't understand it either, but the repeated words she overhears in their conversations have one clear message. Scout's father has shamed their family by taking on the new case. He thinks he's protecting someone, a black man accused of raping a white woman. Atticus is going against the entire town of Macomb. He's going against his own kind. What does all of this mean? Scout asks her father one evening. He sighs. The part of the day Atticus looks forward to most is after dinner, when he can read the newspaper in peace. But he folds the paper and answers her questions. He explains that rape is the forcible taking of a woman's body without her consent. Scout doesn't fully understand the meaning, but she moves on to her next question. Atticus tells her that he's defending a black man named Tom Robinson, who has been accused of rape. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, but he believes in equal justice under the law and the right to a fair trial for everyone. So, will he win the case? Atticus sighs again. No, he replies. We've already lost hundreds of years before this case even began. However, that's not a reason not to try to fight. Scout can picture the object her father is referring to. She feels that the harsh words she hears at school and the angry attitude of the townspeople about her father have touched on an important and deep issue. Atticus's words convey that it has to do with human conscience. One night, Atticus told his brother that before we can live in harmony with others, we must first live in harmony with ourselves. He said if he abandoned Tom Robinson's fate, he wouldn't be able to live with his own conscience. At the time, Scout thought she had accidentally overheard the conversation. Many years later, she realized that her father had sensed her curious presence behind the door and had deliberately chosen words for her to hear. At that moment, Scout thought it was just her father's odd personality. To Scout and Jem, Atticus wasn't like the other men in Macomb. He didn't hunt, fish, drink, smoke, or play poker. The more the name Tom Robinson was mentioned in town, the more mysterious he became. Finally, when he reluctantly bought the air rifle that Jem and Scout had been begging for, he refused to teach them how to shoot. Their uncle would have to do that instead. Atticus preferred a can of milk over a rifle, but he knew the kids would still go bird hunting. Fine, they could shoot as many sparrows as they liked, but he emphasized that killing a mockingbird was a sin. His words felt almost like a sermon. Scout had to ask her neighbor, Miss Maldy, what her father meant. Miss Maldy, who lived across the street and had known Atticus since childhood, explained that mockingbirds are sweet, innocent creatures. They don't destroy anyone's garden or make nests in cornfields. All they do is sing their hearts out for us to hear. That's why it's a sin to kill one. It was another summer. Boo was temporarily forgotten due to all the happenings around town. The attention of Macomb's residents shifted to the upcoming trial. The outcome seemed to be predetermined. Atticus was the topic of much discussion. People couldn't understand his stubborn determination in pursuing this case. Why cause trouble for a result that was already expected? Why go against friends and neighbors for the fate of a man everyone knew was guilty? Tom Robinson was taken to the Macomb County Jail the evening before the trial's first day. Sensing trouble could arise, Atticus decided to spend the night in town. Jem had a bad feeling about this. However, Scout and Dill refused to let their father go alone, so all three followed him. They stood behind a large tree in the square, watching as Atticus sat on the chair. Just like every other evening, he wore his glasses, buttoned up neatly, and had a book on his lap. As usual, he was unarmed. The sound of an engine broke the silence. Atticus put the book down and stood up. A noisy group of cars drove into the square and stopped in front of the jail. Strong men in ragged clothes got out. The leaders stated their purpose. They were there for Tom Robinson. Atticus said he couldn't let them take him. They responded that they had no issue with Atticus, but they were taking Tom Robinson. There was no anger in their threatening tone, just a cold declaration. Scout couldn't bear the tension rising. She ran towards the group. Jem and Dill followed. Atticus remained calm, but now there was a hint of fear in his eyes. He ordered his children to go home, but Scout stayed put. Not knowing what to do, she started talking. Her father always said that talking about what others cared about was a good way to connect. Realizing that the leader was Walter Cunningham, the father of her classmate Scout, struck up a conversation. She asked about his son and repeated the invitation to dinner at the Finches any time he wanted. Finally, Walter took notice of her. His face softened. He knelt down, placed his hand on Scout's shoulder, and promised to pass her message along. Then he climbed back into the car. The others followed. They started the engines and disappeared into the night as quickly as they had arrived. The whole county showed up to witness the trial of Tom Robinson. Atticus told Jem and Scout to stay home, but both couldn't miss this important event. Along with Dill, they snuck into the courtroom and found seats in the balcony, overlooking the courtroom. The prosecutor's case went as follows. Tom Robinson, a black farmer, lived in the black settlement, near the town's dump. On his daily route to work, he often passed the Ewell family's Hazapur, white family. One day, Myella Ewell, 19 years old, screamed. Her father, Bob Ewell, ran to the house and found Tom beating Myella. He chased Tom away and called Sheriff Tate. Tate examined Myella, who had bruises on her face, and heard her recount the events of that afternoon. She said that Tom hadn't passed by as usual, but instead saw her alone, a rare sight due to the large Ewell family, and raped her. When she resisted, he beat her. Atticus's defense of Robinson exposed cracks in the prosecutor's story. During cross-examination, Sheriff Tate admitted he had called for a doctor, despite the severity of Myella's wounds. He also confirmed that the right side of Myella's face had the worst bruising, indicating the attacker might be left-handed. When Bob Ewell took the stand, Atticus began questioning his literacy. Angrily, Bob agreed to write his name on paper with his left hand. Next, it was Myella's turn to testify. Atticus asked her to recount the events of that afternoon, but her testimony was full of contradictions. Finally, Atticus asked Tom to stand up. Tom was tall, strong, and handsome, but when he stood, it was obvious he was disabled. His left arm was severely crippled from a work accident. Tom testified that Myella knew him better than just seeing him through the window, as she claimed. When he passed by, she often asked him to do odd jobs for her without pay. Tom helped Myella because he thought she was lonely. One day, she asked him to kiss her, but he refused. When Bob came home, Tom ran in fear. He asserted he never touched Myella. Both Tom and Atticus implied that it was Bob Ewell who had beaten his daughter. Atticus concluded that there was no credible evidence against Tom Robinson. Myella Ewell had lied to cover up her own shame after being rejected by a black man. Bob Ewell had also lied to protect the remaining honor of his family. Worse yet, both believed their lies would be accepted because of their skin color. However, the law does not discriminate based on race. Atticus knew the jury was made up of rational people and believed they would make the only reasonable decision, acquit Tom Robinson. But after hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict Atticus had known was inevitable. Tom Robinson was guilty. This was the painful truth of society. Atticus explained to Jem and Scout that the testimony of a white person was always given more weight than that of a black person in Southern courts. Even rational people lost their composure when confronted with deep-seated racial prejudice. However, there was a glimmer of optimism. In fact, the jury deliberated for hours, whereas Atticus had predicted the decision would take only minutes. That was progressive. Was clear they struggled to make such an unreasonable judgment, and this also meant that Tom Robinson had a good chance of appealing. Scout and Jem weren't as optimistic as their father. They had grown up believing that the people of Macomb were the best in the world, and now they suddenly saw the rot hidden deep within the town, like a worm breaking out of its cocoon. Miss Maudie comforted them. She said the people of Macomb were the safest people in the world. They rarely had to face moral challenges like this one. That's why they needed someone like Atticus to show them the right way. She said it wasn't a coincidence that Atticus was chosen to represent Tom Robinson. Deep down, the people of Macomb knew what was right and what was wrong. They just struggled to do the right thing and accept the truth. But Jem and Scout remained unconvinced. As Jem said, he was beginning to understand why Boo never came outside, because his house was far more beautiful than the world outside. Tom Robinson would never be able to appeal. He lost faith in justice and decided to take matters into his own hands. He ran toward the prison wall and tried to climb it. He almost succeeded, if not for his crippled arm. He was shot down by the guards and died instantly. A newspaper article called it a pointless death. like killing a mockingbird. Life in Maycomb slowly returned to normal. Most people happily forgot about the trial. As Miss Motti said, it was not a proud moment for Maycomb. However, there was one person who couldn't forget Bob Ewell. One day, he spat in Atticus's face at the post office and swore to take revenge on the lawyer. Atticus let it go. He thought it was just Bob's way of regaining some pride after being humiliated in court. It's likely that if he hadn't encountered Atticus that day, Bob would have taken his anger out on Mayella. But Atticus had misjudged Bob. He was determined to take revenge. The opportunity came that fall. One Halloween night, Jem and Scout were walking home after the school's Halloween party. As they passed the Radley house, someone suddenly lunged at Scout. She felt pressure on her chest and heard Jem scream. Then everything went black. When Scout came to, she was home. Her father Atticus, the sheriff, the doctor, and a stranger who Scout recognized as Boo Radley were all present. Scout watched in shock as the doctor carried Jem upstairs. A few moments later, the doctor came down and said that Jem had broken his arm but would recover. Then Atticus and the sheriff began talking. Ewell was dead, his body still lying in the schoolyard with a knife in his back. Atticus said he was sure Jem had stabbed him, but the sheriff shook his head. According to him, it was possible that Ewell had tripped and fallen onto his own knife. Atticus thanked him for his intention to conceal the truth, but he couldn't accept it. The truth had to be exposed. He didn't want Jem to live with the rumor that he had killed someone and got away with it, because his father was a well-connected lawyer. The sheriff looked at Atticus intently. He said that this was the only time he'd seen Atticus misunderstand the truth. The person Atticus was protecting wasn't Jem, it was Boo. It was Boo, hearing the commotion, who ran out with a kitchen knife. Boo had saved Jem and Scout. Atticus could try to expose the truth, but if necessary, the sheriff would call him a liar in court. Tom Robinson died without clear cause, and now the person responsible was dead. It was time to let the dead rest with the dead. Dragging Boo into the light would ruin the life of this young man. Boo wasn't perfect, but he never intended to harm anyone. With nothing more to say, the sheriff wished the Finch family and Boo a good night. Atticus sat for a long while, staring at the wisteria tree on the porch. Finally, he turned to Scout. Did she understand? Scout thought her father needed cheering up, so she hugged him. She said she understood, and the sheriff was right. The way he told the story was the best way. Atticus wanted to know why she thought that. Scout answered, "It's like killing a mockingbird, innocent and pure, right, Dad?" Atticus buried his face in his daughter's hair for a moment. When he lifted his head, his steps were lighter. Before entering the house, he stopped in front of Boo. "Thank you for saving my children, Arthur," he said. Doing what is right is a matter of belief. It is deeply personal. Atticus Finch reminds us that if we want to live harmoniously with others, we must first learn to live harmoniously with ourselves. This often means going against the views of the community. Those who do so may not be thanked, but they represent the best version and conscience of the community. They remind us that people have the ability to rise above prejudice and fear, to find what is truly right. To Kill a Mockingbird is a powerful and thought-provoking novel that addresses the complexities of race, morality, and justice in America. Set in the 1930s in the fictional town of Maycomb, Alabama, the story is narrated by Scout Finch, a young girl who grows up witnessing the trials and tribulations of her father, Atticus Finch, as he defends Tom Robinson, a black man falsely accused of raping a white woman. One of the most striking aspects of the novel is the way it highlights the deep-rooted racial injustice in the southern United States. Through the trial of Tom Robinson, the story illustrates how prejudice, fear, and ignorance can shape a community's views and actions, often leading to tragic consequences. What is most powerful is the contrast between the innocence of Scout and her brother, Jem, and the harsh realities they begin to understand as they witness their father's fight for justice. Atticus Finch, as the moral backbone of the novel, serves as a beacon of integrity, wisdom, and empathy. His dedication to doing what is right, even when it goes against the grain of societal expectations, provides a strong moral compass for both his children and the reader. Atticus teaches his children the importance of understanding others' perspectives, even when they disagree or find them hard to understand. His famous advice to Scout, "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view," resonates throughout the novel. The portrayal of racial inequality is heart-wrenching but necessary. To Kill a Mockingbird forces readers to confront uncomfortable truths about the justice system. the effects of prejudice, and the capacity for human cruelty. But it also offers a glimpse of hope, as characters like Atticus, Scout, and even Boo Radley show that goodness, kindness, and courage can persist in a world filled with injustice. Overall, To Kill a Mockingbird is a timeless classic that continues to be relevant today. It challenges us to reflect on our values, our biases, and our role in fighting for a more just society. Lee's portrayal of innocence lost, as well as the impact of moral courage, makes this book a must-read for anyone who seeks to understand the complexities of human nature and social justice. And that wraps up our deep dive into this remarkable book. We hope it's been valuable to you. If you're interested in more titles with similar themes, leave a comment with your thoughts and recommendations. You can also buy the book to experience it more clearly, as well as support the author. I will leave the link in the description below for you to easily search. If you like the channel, you can press the like button, share, and turn on the notification bell to receive new content. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video.